Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. Today we are talking about a very special topic, and that is how to deal with gophers and voles. They have been terrorizing me in my garden, stealing not just plants, but massive harvests. So right before you could actually see an example of this, because right over here, I have a cage that is empty, and over here, I have a cage that has 2 broccolini plants. Now, why would I put a cage over nothing? Well, I didn't. Actually, right there, you can see a little pile of dirt on the surface, which is where the vole excavated, dug out, and pulled my entire broccolini plant underground to consume it. Not only that, but they did it to this one too. So while I was thinking that I was protecting my plants by putting this cage over the top, there was something lurking beneath that stole my entire plant. Just as I was setting up the camera, I even noticed that in my raised bed over there, one of my best looking new broccolini seedlings is chomped in half with half of it literally buried underground because the vole tried to drag it under. A couple things. First, I want to add a disclaimer because in this video, we might be showing some dead voles or gophers. I'll definitely be talking about how to trap, aka kill them. We're not doing any trapping where you catch them in the cage and release them elsewhere. That is just not a solution to a problem like this. So just know that up front. If you don't want to see that, you don't want to hear about it, click away from this video, that's totally fine. The other thing we're going to be talking about is the types of damage, the evidence that you have a gopher or vole problem, how to actually block them from doing any damage in the first place, talking about gopher netting, gopher mesh underground, and even how to retroactively add protection to a raised bed that's already been filled and planted. Now, one of the other things I want to cover are things that just do not work. Up front here, you see this little green thing? We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Before we go too deep into this rabbit hole, I do want to justify why it is worth actually dealing with these pests, especially right now in the early spring or before springtime. This is when they are breeding. So if you do have signs of gophers in your garden, you're going to really regret not dealing with it. I'll tell you exactly why. When most pests are in my garden, I don't actually mind that much. They tend to take like one plant, affected very severely, and I lose that. Now, the problem with voles and gophers is that they live underground, so you have no idea how many there are, and they eat the roots of your plants. I had an entire raised bed over there filled with monster broccolis. I'm talking broccoli this big, bigger than I've ever grown before. Then all of a sudden, I noticed that the center of that broccoli started to rot away. I went to investigate, I wobbled the plant, and almost all of the roots were gone. And so the plant started to rot from above down. And that is exactly what happens. Across my entire garden, I started noticing a lot of my plants actually giving up too early. What I mean too early is that basically a bed full of brassicas like broccolis should not go to bolting so soon in the season. It is not hot enough, it's not dry enough. They shouldn't be stressed to the point they are starting to produce actual flowers instead of just florets, unless they are severely stressed by something like a vole or a gopher eating those roots. So they are severely damaging. They're not just doing little bits and bobs across your garden. They are taking whole plants underground. I'm talking like the broccolinis that both disappeared there. Now I'm behind a full month. If I wanted to start those from seed again to get to the same size, it would literally take me a month to get there. And then I would have to wait and transplant it. By the time I get it in the garden again, it's going to be too hot for me to grow a broccolini. So it is a bit devastating to have gophers and voles actively destroying your garden. It is 100% worth dealing with the problem face first. So let's show you some of the signs of gopher damage, signs that they are present in your garden, and then we'll move into trapping, aka killing those gophers. The first thing I want to draw attention to is actual evidence that you have a gopher problem. Now, obviously, I knew I had a plant there, it is now gone, but any number of things could have taken that plant. But what you see right here is the true evidence that something underground took it. Look at the rest of the surface soil here, it's all mulchy, covered in compost, but right here, this is actually ground from deep beneath. It's more clay rich, it's crumbly, and it's in this nice little pile up front. You can see another entrance to their tunnel right there. As you look around, you could notice that it looks physically different, the texture is different, the color is different. This is exactly where one of those voles or gophers popped up. So that is the most obvious evidence, the surface expression. Let me show you some other signs. Right here at the edge of my raised bed is another sign of damage. I think this is probably a vole, not a gopher. We'll talk a little bit about more of that later. But what you see here is that my broccoli plant has been gnawed on. It looks like a beaver came through here, chewed on the actual plant. But the telltale sign that this is not a rat, for example, and it is definitely a vole or a gopher, is that part of the plant has been literally pulled underground. So right over here, one of the leaf nodes has been pulled underneath. There's also that telltale sign of sort of disturbed soil mounding on the very surface. This is a surefire sign that somebody has moved into my raised bed here and is probably roving all through, eating the roots of my plants, and that is exactly why you want to deal with this. Another surefire sign of a digging pest is when you look around an area that usually is covered in mulch and you see a bare dirt patch like this. Now, my guess is that if I take my finger and poke it, it's going to plunge straight down and probably into a tunnel. This would be a great place to set a trap. So let's test that theory. Oh, yeah. So that is a gopher tunnel. I actually went to the point where I could feel open air beneath me. So sitting about 2 inches beneath the soil here is 100% a gopher tunnel. And that is next to my fruiting shrubs, like this branch that's hanging right here. And just behind me, there's actually a pomegranate. So I don't want to lose my trees. I'm definitely going to be setting a trap in this section here. Now that we know that voles or gophers are present in our garden, it's time to actually talk about trapping. Now I want to make a few more disclaimers here because one of the things that's going to happen to any one of you in your saga while you're trapping either voles or gophers is that one of these traps is not going to complete the kill. It will have caught the vole or gopher, but it might still be alive. And I just want to prepare you at home that that might be something that happens and you will have to take that into your own hands to quote unquote finish the job. Now, I might talk a little bit about that more later in the video, but for now, let's get into the 3 traps that I've chosen. Originally, I did get 6 different types of traps, but these are the ones that I found to work the best, the most reliable, and that are the easiest to set. Now, the first and the most commonly recommended one out there is the gopher hawk. It looks like this. It actually goes down into the ground where the tunnels are, and that is where you set the trap itself. Now, the way it works is that they will go through here, hit this little pin, and then they get pulled in and something breaks and hopefully they die. Now they also sell this tool here, which will help set these traps. I will be using this. I'll also show you how to do it without it, but I do actually recommend this because it is quite handy. So that is the gopher hawk. We'll get into how to set every one of these traps, all the intricacies and everything about that as we get into the video. But my favorite trap of all the ones that I've tried so far has been this right here. It's called a cinch trap. It was very effective. It's much more powerful. So I feel like this is going to complete the job much more effectively on the first try over some of these other traps. Again, we'll talk about how to set these up and why I like this one so much. I feel like this one, if you set it correctly, is the most foolproof and the highest chance of actually catching one of the pests. Now, the most simple, sort of cheapest commodity gopher trap out there is something that looks like this. This one in particular is from Maccabee. It's called All Reliable. And I've actually had this exact trap that I'm holding in my hand for 3 years now. It has a little bit of rust on it. I've actually personally killed, I think, 3 voles using just this same trap. All of these traps are reusable. And like I said, this one's been going for 3 years and has been fine. Now there are other variations of this trap, like this one here, which is a Victor gopher trap. And I'll talk a little bit about it, but effectively anything that looks like this works pretty much the same way. Now, the other things you're going to want in your toolkit when you are battling these guys is probably something like a flag. Cinch Trap actually doesn't sell them. They send them with the traps. So you could put them as a reminder to where you set those traps. That's pretty handy to have. The other thing you're gonna want is some sort of digging implement like a trowel or a scoop to actually clear out the tunnels. And again, you'll see what I mean in a moment. And I don't know about you guys, but if I'm ever shoving my hand into any mystery hole, I'm going to be wearing gloves. So I highly encourage you to have some gloves just as an extra layer of protection. So that is sort of the basic setup. Now let's get into how to actually set a trap in one of these tunnels. And I'm probably going to start it off with the gopher hawk because this is the one that I see recommended most. And I'll show you guys how to actually make sure this works. It's time to set our first trap, and we are back at that little dirt disturbance that I found earlier where I poked my hole right through the soil. And that is exactly where we are going to be setting up this gopher hawk because it's a ideal situation for a gopher hawk where you don't have that much space to excavate the area. You're near a bunch of things that have established roots. The first thing we're going to do is actually pull out this probe that they sell. So the way this works is that it has this huge metal stick, and this is what you use to kind of poke around and look for the tunnels. Oh, see how it just shot all of a sudden right in the middle here? There's this gap. I could actually pull this up and down, and there's a little ring on the very tip of this. And I could tell that from right here, that's where the top of the tunnel is. If I drop this, I'll hit the bottom. So from there, actually, let's start at the bottom. So here's the bottom of my tunnel. I could feel the bottom of the ring touch that. I'm gonna put my finger there, my thumb actually, and then I'll lift it, and that's where I feel the top of the tunnel. So the width of the tunnel is basically this right here, where my fingers are on the actual probe. And that is pretty standard for a tunnel width. That's perfectly what I would expect. And you could see that we are deep enough. We're about maybe an inch or two below the soil surface. So I probed it right here. I know that there's a sign of a tunnel there. So the next thing I'm going to do here is you have two options. You could either dig it out using a trowel, or you could just plunge this directly into the hole. I'm going to try troweling it first. I'm going to bring the camera a lot closer so you could see exactly how I set this trap. Here's where I plunged my finger in the initial area where I found the gopher, and right here is where I sensed that there is a tunnel expression. So what we're going to do is pull our probe out. We now have our mark. And then what I'm going to do here is just dig out the surface of this tunnel. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting my fingers inside to try to tell which direction the tunnel is, just so that I know. And right from what I can sense, it's going in this direction. Now that's perfect for when you're setting one of these cinch traps or one of those snap traps like the Maccabee. In this case, it actually doesn't even matter that you know which direction the tunnel is going, because what this does is that when you deploy it, this right here is going to be what senses and triggers the gopher to actually interact with the trap. So if I were to get something irresponsible here, like the stick, and hit that center post, it should snap back into the mechanism, just like that. And that is what's killing the gopher. Once the trap's in the hole, you want to put your hand on top of this. And then from here, using this hand, you want to pull up, not actually push on the trap. So now what's happening is that the trap is deployed inside that tunnel. And the next thing I could do is try to cover this up so the gopher doesn't see the light coming through and know that this is something suspicious. So I'm going to just take some of this mulch here, and we're going to cover this up ever so lightly, just to try to hide as much of the light as we possibly can. I'll leave this finger hole open here because that'll let some light through to let the gopher know basically that something's going on here and it might come to investigate. So this gopher hawk is set. Let's go back to the other holes where we found in the garden and set the other types of traps there. This one is personal for me because this bed has been limping along, and I thought it was all me. I thought maybe I mismanaged my water and there was some other issue going on. But seeing this has not only made me feel better because I know that it's not my fault, but B, it actually made me feel terrible because now I know that my battle has just begun. So what are we gonna do? First, we're gonna take a look at this broccoli. Sadly, it actually went for the plant and not for the roots here, which is interesting. So over here, there's no point in continuing the saga. This guy is dead. We could get that out of the way. And right on the edge here is where we saw that loose dirt. So what we want to do here is actually fully dig this out and try to find where that tunnel is. Hopefully it's going in a specific direction and not just straight down. If it's going straight down, it's not going to be ideal for either the cinch or the Maccabee trap. It would be much better suited for something like the gopher hawk. So we're gonna dig this out, we'll see what it looks like, and then we'll determine which kind of trap we wanna set here. So I'm actually really glad that this happened because it shows you that no matter how much you think you know about a problem, gophers and voles will always elude you. There are zero signs of any digging, any loose tunnels in here. I cannot sense any sort of evidence that somebody came through and dug here. Now, one thing that could have happened is that this happened before I watered my beds last night, and that might have settled some of the soil. But when I'm shoving my hand in here, what I would expect is that there should be a loose spot where they actually tunneled in, and I don't sense that. So in this case, I am not going to set any traps here. Instead, what I'll do is I'll leave it disturbed as it is, and then we'll see if it changes over the course of the next 2 days. So this one, no trap is going to be set here that will do anything of value for us. So let's move on to the next site. This is the area where I've seen the most activity. Obviously, the 2 broccolini plants that are entirely gone while still being covered with the cage are good evidence, but I also have that extra mound right there. So in this area, let's try to set 2 to 3 traps. My goal here is to set 1 cinch trap and 1 of the Maccabee style traps. I'm gonna bring you in very close and just show you exactly what I'm doing here, because I think that the most important thing when it comes to setting traps are the details in how you actually set it, how you prepare the area that you're digging. That is what's given me the greatest success rate. So let's get in close, let's excavate these tunnels, and hopefully this time we'll be able to find which direction they're going. I thought that without a doubt we would be able to trace these tunnels and set the traps. And that means we are 1, 2, 3, the raised bed, 4 out of 5 of the areas where we detected them. I could not find any evidence whatsoever that a tunnel was connected to them, even though that was in just yesterday. Now, the only thing that happened in between then and now is that my irrigation ran last night. So there's a good chance that the water maybe hit some of the tunnels, collapsed some of them. I don't see how that's possible considering it's just irrigation from drip, but I don't have any other explanation. This is the beauty of trying to film a video on gophers and voles, is that they are tricky and they can outsmart just about anyone. So we'll check back tomorrow for any signs of any new gopher or vole damage, any missing plants, and we'll reassess and set some more traps when we find a good place to do so. It's the next day and it's time to check on the gopher traps. One thing you see here on the gopher hawk is that when you see this yellow part, that means that it's been triggered. Whether it has something or not, we'll find out. But when you see the yellow, that means that something has triggered the trap and it is now back up in the barrel. So we're about to pull this, but I have seen across the garden a whole bunch of gopher and or vole activity. The area that I dug up in the raised bed is backfilled with soil now, so we know that somebody has been back in there. In the other bed where I was missing 2 broccolini, I am now also missing a lettuce that disappeared literally after I dug around and shot that part of the video. So same day, and we had damage. So I'm gonna pull this now. If you don't wanna see potentially what's underneath, I would skip ahead, but let's go ahead and see if I caught anything or not. So there we have it. We did catch indeed what looks like a vole, if I had to guess. It's not that big, maybe a field mouse, but this thing got snagged in the head and it should have died immediately. Now, whether this was the only pest in the garden, I do not know, but for sure this guy is now dead. And it is sad, but I'm very happy that the trap was effective in at least killing it right away. So what I'm going to do is I will dispose of that. A lot of people like to put them back in the hole, but in this case, I want to put the trap back in the hole in case there's another one around. And I will actually probably just dispose of that in the compost. So let's go check the other areas where I noticed activity and see if we could find any evidence of tunnels. I found this tunnel about 10 feet away from the same area in my garden that I had set up the gopher hawk in. And after digging it out, I realized this would be the perfect shape for either a Maccabee or Cinch style trap. Using a flashlight, I was able to illuminate the tunnel, figure out which direction it was running in, which makes setting the trap perfectly in line with the tunnel much easier. The Maccabee trap is a little bit fiddly to set up with a bar that swings over the 2 pinching arms that arrests itself on a pressure plate. The idea is that the pest has to crawl through the pinchers and then push the pressure plate, which then triggers the pinchers around it. When you are ready to set your trap in the tunnel, make sure that you're pushing onto the pressure plate so that it's not going to accidentally trigger. Since this trap didn't have a leash attached, I tied a little bit of string to a garden staple and then anchored it outside of the tunnel. This will stop you from losing your traps in the tunnel if a gopher gets snagged on it. Finally, I like to cover the opening of the tunnel with something like this piece of wood, which effectively blocks light from hitting the area that the trap is in and encourages the pest to go fully through the tunnel and thus go through the trap. So now we'll see if we catch anything. The reality of dealing with gophers is that something is going to die. So in this case, it is quite sad that we had to kill something, but if we didn't, our garden would be destroyed. So I never take pleasure in this kind of thing, but sometimes it's necessary. If you guys don't want to see it, please don't look. But that's what it did. It snagged the gopher in the back and it is now dead. So I will be putting this trap back in the hole just on the off chance that there's another gopher living in it. But for now, we know at least that this side is safe. We're up here in my front yard garden, an area you don't normally see. And the reason why we're here is actually a very good thing. And that is that I cannot find any more gophers in my backyard. At this point, it seems like I've handled the issue, at least in the vegetable garden area. But I walked around and I noticed that there are a lot of little holes here in the front yard. Now, I have no intention of landscaping this area anytime soon because this year is an entire total drought. So I do not have the budget to add water to a new area. So for now, it's going to be left as a weedy mess, but I still want to deal with these gophers. So what I have here is a mound. I could see that loose dirt in the center. I don't know how old this is, if it's active or not, but let's set a trap anyway because the principles are the same. So what we're going to do here is we are going to be using the cinch trap. Now I mentioned that this was my favorite trap, even though I didn't show myself catching one with it. I have caught 3 voles and actually 1 proper gopher using this exact trap. So let me show you how to set it, how to dig a hole so that it actually works, and why I like this one so much. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to set this trap. It's a little bit more intricate than some of the others, but it is worth the effort. So right here is the arm that's actually the spring. So that is what actuates the opening here to trigger these 2 arms from closing. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take this little piece of metal here. That's going to actually go on top of that lever that we just pushed. So now this bar is holding this big spring in check. The next thing we're going to do is take this loop here and place it over the top of the last little bar that we just added. So that one right there, it's going to get right in behind this little metal notch here. So now that this is in place, what you do is you slide this part. This is the actual trigger for the trap. You want to slide this forward so that this part is sitting down in like that. So what's happening here, it's a very hair trigger, very delicate hair trigger. This arm is down, that arm is holding it, this arm is holding that arm, and now this little bit of metal here is the only thing stopping this from triggering. So the way this works, and the reason why this trap works so well, is because of how long the section is. You could bury this entire thing, not bury, you could place this entire part deep inside the tunnel. So picture the tunnel, you have the vole over on this side, or the gopher, and they're trying to come through to see where that light is coming in from, which is back here. So the only way forward is they have to go through this. And as they go through this, they're going to push on this little circle here. Now watch what happens when I push. That's so fast I couldn't even see it. So what happened was that this arm swung across, and it basically will break the neck or back of whatever crawls through this. So it's very effective at killing, which I really appreciate. I don't want my trap to maim whatever it catches. I want it to actually instantly kill it so it doesn't have to suffer. So that's how you set the trap. But now let me show you how to actually dig the tunnel and set it properly. So right here, you can see this patch of grass has this random circle in it. And in the middle is all of this loose dirt. So this is definitely a tunnel entrance. So what we're going to do is first just try to dig it out as best we can in a gentle way. So I feel my trowel plunging very easily, and this is very dry dirt, so I know that there's a tunnel down here. When the dirt is this dry, it actually might be harder to set a trap properly, because if you think about it, there's not much to hold this tunnel up. Oh, okay, so there we go. So what I just did there is, as I was digging, I kind of moved my trowel around. I felt a large resistance here, and when I worked on it, I was able to pull this dirt back, and now watch this. See how far that trowel just went in? That is the tunnel entrance. So now I know that there's a tunnel going down this way, but we've got this big old trap here. And what we want to do is get this entire section in there. So what I like to do is I like to back excavate in the opposite direction of the tunnel. So this is the direction. What I want to do now is carve out a little section right here. Now that we have our landing pad cleared, what I'm going to do is show you what it looks like from this angle so you could see what I'm going for when constructing this sort of ramp here. So as you could see, this is the area I cleared out behind it. Here's the tunnel. I don't know if that flashlight's going to show you anything, but basically there is a tunnel shooting in this direction. So now what we want to do is set our trap again. So just like that, you see we have our hair trigger now set. So when I enter the tunnel, what I like to do is I like to make sure that I'm pressing on this point. So I'm pushing this forward because I don't want this trap to accidentally trigger as I'm trying to get in the tunnel. So the reason why we want this ramp is so we could easily just gently slide it as deep into the tunnel as possible. We don't want it to just sit like this at the entrance. That's going to have a very low odd of success. What you want to do is try to get it as far in and as parallel as you can to that tunnel entrance. So even doing something like that should do quite nicely. So now that the trap is in there, the next thing I like to do is trick the vole or gopher. I don't want them to think that the tunnel starts here. I want them to think that the tunnel starts back here. So the easiest way to do that is to get something solid or opaque, just like that, and cover up that backside. Now, if you want, you could even take some dirt here and put it along the edges to make sure that no light is bleeding in from that direction. And what this is going to do is it's going to trick that vole and gopher to go deeper into this tunnel and hopefully walk through the trap instead of just backfilling dirt and triggering the trap with nothing getting caught. So that is how you set a cinch trap. If you do something like this, I can almost assure you that you will catch something. While we're waiting on that cinch trap, let's talk about how to protect your garden from gophers if they're already in there and you can't trap them. One of the worst case scenarios is that you have a bunch of raised beds and you never installed any gopher netting because you figured you didn't have a gopher problem, so why would you bother? That's exactly what happened to me. I did not install any gopher blocks on any single one of these raised beds. So what I've been doing now is retroactively installing it. This is the bed that I had those giant broccolis in that I sadly had to remove. And I have installed gopher netting here. I've already done it to actually just 2 of the beds in this side of the garden. So I still have 1, 2, 3, 4 more beds to go. And today I'm going to show you exactly how to retroactively install something like a gopher netting inside your raised bed. Digging out the bed will give us plenty of space and depth to install gopher mesh blocker that is deep enough to not just get in our way, but also deep enough to not interfere with root crops like carrots. Ideally, you want to go down to about 10 to 12 inches of depth, or at the very least, roughly 8 inches. Once it's dug out, I like to walk over the soil just to flatten it out and give it a little bit of compaction, which makes it a little easier to install the mesh. This particular mesh is from Voles and it's 100% stainless steel, which means it won't break down in a couple of years from moist soil like galvanized wire does. It comes in a 3-foot wide roll that's actually doubled over with seams, which means that if you cut off one seam, it'll be 6 foot wide. The cool thing is that this is actually cuttable with just regular scissors, but don't worry, no gopher is going to chew its way through this mesh. Simply pull out enough length to cover the bottom of your bed, cut the sheet out, and once you cut the sheet out, you could then cut off one of these seams to double that width, and then you could begin to assemble it near the bottom of the bed. I like to choose one side, and then I'll take landscape staples which are butted up right against the walls of the bed to make sure that the mesh is as tight as possible up against the wall. I usually do about 2 staples per foot, and that feels pretty secure to me. Once you get one side secured, you could start working on the other edges, working your way off to the other end. And as I'm doing that, I also like to place a few of the staples right in the middle of the mesh to keep it from bowing up or being pushed up over time. Once you get to the other end, secure it, and then cut off any extra slack, and now we could backfill this bed. And that's how you protect a raised bed from gophers, even after you've already filled it. So now let's just wait and see if we catch anything with that cinch trap. It's been 1 week since I set this cinch trap in the front yard and it caught nothing, which actually I take as a great sign because that means I have no new voles or gophers present in my yard. It's been about 2 weeks since we've caught any. I haven't seen any new activity. We're back at the original scene of the crime where you could see that things have grown, things have transplanted out. It is very different from the way that it was at the beginning of this video because of that gopher damage in the first place. So the total tally, even though I didn't catch one when I set up on this trap, I've caught 3 with the cinch trap, 2 with the gopher hawk, and 2 with the Maccabee trap. So all 3 are fine. I think this is still the best one overall. The gopher hawk is very useful if you are intercepting a tunnel. It's just a hole, you could pop it in. If I had to choose just 2 traps, I would go cinch trap and gopher hawk because I think they have different use cases. But now what I would like to do is talk about some of the things that don't work or maybe don't work or just have no real evidence of having worked. And one of those things is actually right in here next to me. So the first item I wanted to talk about is exactly this thing right here. Now, oh, I could feel it buzzing at the moment. The way this thing works, you could probably hear that buzz. The way this thing works is that it randomly sends out a different vibration pattern every so often. It does like 3 different kinds. And the purpose of it is to essentially scare away anything that might be digging underground into thinking that something else is already there. So if a gopher or a vole was coming through and then it all of a sudden felt those vibrations, it should in theory go away. But what happened? Well, I had this literally right here and 1, 2, 3, 4 plants disappeared within 3 feet of it. And this claims to have an effective range of 50 feet. Now, the reason why I'm not saying this doesn't work at all is that I don't know if it's more specific towards maybe it works well with gophers, but not voles, because vole is what I caught in this garden bed. I can't say for sure if it does anything or not. At this point, I've already purchased them. I can't return them, so I'm going to keep using them strictly for that reason. but I can't really recommend them because I have no surefire way of saying that this does anything at all or what the difference is between different brands. So I won't even recommend a specific one. So that is one thing where I'm up in the air about. Again, I've already bought it, so I'm going to keep using it. But now let me show you something else that I know for sure doesn't work. This right here is one of the things that I do not recommend because you will just drive yourself crazy trying to do it. And that is shoving a hose inside the tunnel to try to flood or drown whatever is in there. That's what I tried to do right here in that hole where we caught something. And basically what happened was I had the hose on full blast for like 30 minutes and there was no signs of any water backing up or anything like that. So I think it's a fool's errand. The tunnel networks are vast, they're complex, they have breathing chambers, ways of stopping them from getting flooded. And so just filling it with water is probably just literally throwing water away. Now, part of me thought that by flooding the tunnels, I'm probably helping to collapse them. And I do still think that that is true. So especially once I've caught all of the voles or gophers, flooding the tunnel probably helped erode or break down that tunnel a little further to at least dissuade someone from using it in the future. But it's definitely not going to solve your problem. It's not going to kill them. And I would say that if you do so, just do so knowing that you're probably doing nothing. I wanted to mention one other thing, which is that there is this product out there that is sold for commercial applications. I think it's called literally the Rodinator. And what it does is it pumps gas, not just propane, but like oxygen and acetylene gas deep into the tunnels, which they then ignite and it explodes, creating a vacuum that sucks out the oxygen and also collapses the tunnels, thus killing everything in there. You should never do this at home because we are surrounded by all sorts of things buried underground, and we're also not using a professional tool for it. So please do not try to fill your tunnels with gas and explode it. You could literally explode critical infrastructure to your home. You could get into a gas line, you could cause a fire. It's really not worth it. Even in a yard my size, I was able to handle the problem just using traps, and that is exactly what I would recommend that you guys do at home as well. And I have to at least mention this one last thing, which is to please never use poison in your garden for whatever it is, whether it's rodents, rats, voles, gophers. It is such a bad idea for a couple of different reasons. First of all, you don't know if you actually killed what you were trying to kill. It might still be there, it just didn't get killed by the poison or never interacted with it. Second, if it does eat the poison and then go on to survive some period of time, it could get consumed by a cat, a dog, a hawk, an owl, coyote, any natural thing in the world that consumes it could now get poisoned and die as a consequence. The main thing is to try to avoid doing that kind of thing because you're only going to end up hurting more than what you originally wanted to hurt. The last thing I'll mention is that I have heard people use something as simple as juicy fruit, like the gum. I can't say whether that works or not, if it's specific to one type of pest or another. But again, that's one of those things where it might work, it might kill it, but you're not going to actually see any evidence of that thing getting killed, which is what one of the traps will do. And that to me is more peace of mind in knowing that 100% the thing is dead, it's not suffering, and B, I know that it's dead and I know that I've solved that problem. So those are the things that I would not recommend you guys do when you go after chasing voles, gophers, or any other digging pest in your garden. So it's now been 1 month since I started my campaign against voles and gophers in my garden. And at this point, I feel confident in knowing that I've solved the problem. I see no new signs of digging pests, no missing plants, and I can now move forward and plant with confidence. The only thing really left to do is to ensure that all of my raised beds are protected. I've now dug out and installed gopher netting in 3 of the beds, and I have about 4 more to go. Once that is done, I will feel 100% confident in planting for the rest of the year, especially in my raised beds, knowing that I will never have that problem again. Now, I'd love to hear if you guys have any tips or solutions that you have tried that worked for you that I did not cover in this video, but thank you guys for watching. Good luck in the garden, and I'll see you guys next time.